Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Adults, Children and Health Overview and Scrutiny Panel on the 24th of March 2025. My name is Councillor Taylor and I will be chairing this meeting. This meeting is being held in person via Zoom and streamed live to the public on YouTube. I remind all attendees that participation in the meeting indicates consent to the audio and video being streamed live and acknowledgement that after the meeting, it will continue to be available in the public domain. We're not expecting the fire alarm to sound this evening. However, if it does, please may I ask that you leave in an orderly fashion and rendezvous across the road outside the library next to the fountain. Firstly, it would be useful if all voting members and officers could introduce themselves so that the public are aware of who is in this meeting and the role they're undertaking. My name is Councillor Taylor. I'm the chair. If I go over to my vice chair.
Councillor Devon Davis, vice chair.
Councillor Mendy Bra, voting member of the panel.
Councillor Clive Baskerville, Peters Green, member of the panel.
Councillor George Shaw, member of the panel.
I'm Mark Jervis. I'm a co-opted member for education.
Councillor Conneran, member of the panel.
Councillor Gosling, member of the panel.
Councillor Carol da Costa, member of the panel.
Hold it. Holly Reeve, Exploitation Missing Children Coordinator for Achieving for Children.
Danny Gom, Family Hub Manager.
Good afternoon, everybody. Kevin McDaniel, Executive Director for Adult Services, Health and Communities.
Evening, I'm Lynn Ferguson, Executive Director of Children's Services and Education.
Mark Bealey, Principal Democratic Services Officer for Overview and Scrutiny.
I request that meeting participants do not speak unless I specifically invite you to do so. Once I've invited you to speak, before you do so, please state your name and the capacity in which you are speaking if you've not already done so, if appropriate. I will also ask officers to speak at appropriate times. If any individual attempts to disrupt the meeting, I am able to use my powers in the Constitution to adjourn the meeting or to have the individual removed. I would also like to remind councillors that to improve our time and effectiveness as a committee, I would ask you please to limit the repetition of points or questions which have already been raised by others. Where possible, please put forward all new points or questions which you would like raised during a request to speak. We will now start on the agenda items. Do we have any apologies for absence, Mark?
Yes, Chair, received one apology from Councillor Grove.
Thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest?
Sorry, Chair.
To introduce themselves.
Got Martha Early from the NHS.
Oh, hello, Martha. I couldn't see you. Sorry, would you like to introduce yourself now?
Good evening. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm Martha Early. I'm from NHS Frimley Integrated Care Board, and I'm here with my colleague Steve this evening, presenting on the Jubilee ward move. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you beat me to it. I was just about to say Steve there as well.
Evening, everyone. Yes, I'm here. Steve Manley, Strategic Engagement and Communications Lead for NHS Frimley. Nice to be here.
And Purnima, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Hello, I'm Purnima. I am a co-opted member.
And we've also got Councillor Singh joining us online as well. Any declarations of interest?
Oh, yes, Chair. I just wanted to declare that I'm attending the meeting this evening, but I'm not a voting member of the panel. I'm just here representing obviously the thousands of residents that live in my ward in St Mary's. So I'm just observing and I may come in at time to time just to comment. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Singh. Just raise your hand if you want to speak and we'll get to you. Any declarations of interest? Yes? No? Anybody? No. Okay, moving on to agenda item 3. The minutes for the previous meeting. Does anybody have any amendments or anything they want to add, or can we agree them? It's a meeting on the 3rd of February. Agreed? Agreed? Excellent. Okay. So agenda item 4, we have tackling child exploitation, which I believe is Carly and Danny.
About the overview of the national picture, the overview of our local picture, the support that's provided within RBWM, and any future projects and support that we've got lined up. So the national picture there, so we've pulled together some statistics. The first one is from the Children in Need census data from the end of March 2024. So you'll see that there were 15,750 episodes of need where child criminal exploitation was identified as a concern for some young people. 10,180 episodes of need where children being part of a street or organised crime gang was identified as a concern. And to combat that, within the Crime and Policing Bill, there will now be a standalone offence to prosecute adults that are committing child criminal exploitation. There'll also be a new regime for child criminal exploitation, and there'll be some civil preventative orders to prevent exploitative conduct committed by adults against children from occurring or reoccurring. Within the period of 2023 to 2024, the police in England and Wales flagged 15,604 offences of child sexual exploitation. And in 2023 to 24, there were 12,607 child sexual offences that were flagged as an online crime. And we know the concerns around online exploitation are on the increase. There's, again, within that crime and policing bill, the provisions to introduce a new statutory duty for individuals undertaking key roles with responsibility for children and young people in England to report sexual abuse that is disclosed to them when they are made aware of it. It will also include a new criminal offence of attempting to prevent someone reporting child sexual abuse. What we also know from the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse was one of the recommendations of the 3-year limitation period being removed so that victims could then come forward after that point when they were at a point when they were actually ready to disclose the information. That was preventing a barrier from further disclosures from people from historic sexual abuse. Also, we've got the online safety bill that's being discussed at the moment as well, and hopefully that will also put in some measures to protect our children online from viewing or receiving inappropriate materials. And then moving on to our local picture. So what we're seeing locally at the moment, currently more of our young people are at risk of the drug exploitation. And we have a monthly panel called the Risks Outside the Home panel. And in the last 12 months, we've had 16 young people being discussed at that meeting. 11 of those, there were concerns around drug exploitation, and 5 that were concerns around sexual exploitation. And the general age range of any young people that we're currently discussing as our most concerning are 15 to 18.
Thank you. Sorry, just passing over to me. So in terms of the support available in Borough, so this is all delivered by Achieving for Children, predominantly in the family hubs, but also we have a worker who works with those young people 16 to 25, the transition age. So I'm just going to go from left to right. So we offer prevention workshops in schools for year 6+. Each workshop is targeted at a different age, so it's age appropriate. So what we deliver to year 6 is very different to what we deliver to year 12 students. That's obviously a free offer because everything we offer in the family hub is free. Schools just book us in and we will go in and do classroom workshops. We try not to do assemblies because we like to be interactive. In a small group of 30, you can ask young people to work in groups, you can get feedback from them, where you can't do that so much in assemblies. We also have education for parents and carers on our website, which helps parents of pre-teen and teenagers understand the topic, so to speak, and also advice on how they can start those conversations with their children and things to look out for. So on our website, there's lots of information but there's specific areas around sexual exploitation and criminal exploitation. Obviously, that's all available for anyone to go and have a look at any time. Then we move into our early intervention. So this is where we have some low concerns regarding young people. There's no evidence of exploitation, but there may be the odd sign that either a parent or a professional is concerned about, and we will go and offer 1 or 2 sessions with that young person, potentially as part of a wider intervention. So that maybe they're misusing substances, and we're supporting that young person for a number of months. Within that, we may do 1 or 2 sessions on criminal exploitation and sexual exploitation as well. We offer the sessions to the 16 to 18-year-olds to support their transition to adulthood, education support and housing benefits, financial, mental health and self-esteem. And that's really to essentially support the young person to be in a stronger place so they are less likely to be exploited. Then we move up into our targeted support. So that is where there is a bit more evidence that a young person is being groomed. Again, it's similar services that deliver that work, but it's a bespoke piece of intervention. It could be open-ended, so it could go as long as that young person needs, because what we know is that young people who are being exploited, it can take them a number of months, maybe even longer, to actually acknowledge they've been exploited. So that's before you even start the intervention. And again, that's delivered by the family hubs and the transitions worker. And then we move up into our more specialists. So very similar to the targeted, where it's a bespoke intervention, one-to-one, could be in the child's home, it could be at school, it could be in a family hub, wherever the young person feels most comfortable to receive that intervention. But with the specialist, we will support the young person to also engage in specialist mental health support if that's what they need. If they've been exploited, the chances are they will need specialist mental health support in addition to the work we're providing. And that could be through Trust House or CAMS. We'll work with the family, because again, the impact on the family is huge if the young person is living with their family. So we won't just work with the young person, we will work with the whole family. So we have a very different range, levels of support available delivered by Achieving for Children. It's all needs-based. We have a skeleton idea of what we're delivering across every young person, but again, it's very dependent on that young person, and it's delivered in places that they are comfortable and at a pace that is comfortable for that young person. As I said earlier, it's not 10 sessions and that's it. We will continue until we feel that young person is ready to reduce the support. Sorry, I'm just moving to the next slide. So just some numbers really. So this is from April 24 to February 25. So we provided one-to-one support to 16 young people for child sexual exploitation and 7 for child criminal exploitation. That is where the primary concern with the young person is the exploitation. And we've supported 10 young people around digital safety. Grooming can occur anywhere, but we know it occurs a lot online. So as part of the work we do, it could be helping young people be safer online. Where we said primary concern, as I mentioned, that is because the exploitation or the digital safety is the main reason we're working with that child. In terms of one-to-one interventions as part of larger support, so as I said earlier, it could be substance misuse support, and we're delivering exploitation as part of that wider package of support. The numbers are 30 for sexual exploitation, 36 for criminal exploitation, and 65 for digital safety. In terms of our schools workshops attended, we've had 449 pupils attend our exploitation workshops. We can deliver them separately, so a sexual exploitation workshop and a criminal, but there's so much overlap. We also offer workshops where essentially it's both in one workshop, which is what schools are now tending to book in. And we've had 830 students attend our digital safety workshops. They're probably our most popular workshops across all the workshops we offer in schools. So our attendances at our schools workshops are high, and I know we've been delivering some in March. So in terms of financial year, that will be a bit higher than those numbers on the screen. We've had 61 parents who have received one-to-one education on keeping their child safe from risks outside the home. So Risk outside the home refers to exploitation, digital safety, substance misuse, anything where, as it says on the tin, I suppose, the risk isn't within that family unit in the house, it's anything outside the house, so including youth violence. And certainly as family hubs, our whole ethos is supporting that family and the parent to then provide the support to their own, that child and young person. And it could be that there's no real concern, but we thought actually let's deliver some education to the parents. So if it ever was a concern, they can spot the signs or so forth. Or it could be that we've delivered our intervention because there was concerns that the young person is in mentally a stronger place, but we want to support the parents to provide that ongoing support. So when we do close to our service, they've got that support within the home. So just some future projects and support. So the family hubs, we complete return home discussions. So every time a child is reported as missing in the borough, we have a duty to complete a return home discussion. There's a big link between young people who are missing and exploitation. And it works both ways. If a young person is missing a lot, it could be because they're exploited, or it could be they're missing a lot because of stuff within the home and they don't want to be at home. But whilst they're missing, they are more vulnerable to exploitation. So as part of our return home discussions work that we provide in the family hub, there's that real focus on trying to find out and look at it, like trying to see what the young person did. Are there signs of exploitation? And then obviously we will support that accordingly. If we're concerned around a young person, we will complete an indicator analysis tool with them. So that's essentially a document that outlines various signs that could be linked to exploitation, and as professionals we'll complete it. And it gives us a bit of an understanding is the young person been exploited, or are there other vulnerabilities to that young person? And it's not necessarily exploitation.
And with that, so we've put up there, it's being reviewed at the moment across Berkshire. So we are part of the other local authorities have all got together and are looking at the tool because it was last updated in 2021. So we want to make sure that it's really up to date. And I'm hoping that at the end of next month, it will be signed off and agreed going forward. And that tool really gives a comprehensive look at the risks and worries that we have for those young people around exploitation. Then the main thing, what are we going to do about it? Because it's really important, obviously, to identify the risks and concerns, but actually, what are we doing about it? So then we've had a look at that and we've incorporated that and making sure that we've got the views of the young people, the views of the parents or carers that are involved with the young people, so that everything is transparent. So we're all working together in order to safeguard our young people.
So the other thing, we have funding from the Police Crime Commissioner, so the PCC, which currently ends at the end of this month, but we've got another bid in to extend it for a virtual reality tool that we've been using in the family house, but other services within Achieving Children use it as well. And essentially the virtual reality is around gangs, knife crime, criminal exploitation, and it's all about, it's essentially a package where young people have to make decisions in the virtual reality world, and that takes them to a different path. They get to learn in a virtual reality way from those decisions. We use it with parents, we use it with professionals to help them understand what it is like being a young person potentially within a gang, or if they're offered, offered some money to deal with some drugs, which is potentially a start of the exploitation process. So that will continue, assuming that we receive the funding. We provide training to professionals across Achieving for Children, but it can be wider. So again, that's delivered by the Family Hub, and that covers criminal exploitation, sexual exploitation with a focus on boys, because there are still some comments out there in the world that our boys are just being boys, rather than looking at actually the behaviours. So we provide specific training on boys and child sexual exploitation.
And we're also developing an e-learning package as well for our training to make sure that we can spread that awareness wider with that.
And obviously we're continuing all our one-to-one work, that's a given, but we're also continuing our schools workshops across the schools. We've just redesigned all our packages to make them more up to date, more interesting. We've had a lot of positive feedback already from the young people that have received those new packages of support. And we've had a teacher from a local school. He didn't realise we had developed these ourselves. He thought it was a brought-in schools workshop because they were designed so well, I suppose is the best way of saying it. So young people and school staff are feeding back how effective our new schools workshops are. So that is the end of our presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Just before we go to questions from panel members, I think Lynn would like to add a few words.
Chair, you know, I think overall that must be my loud voice. We've got a really robust range of support in place in relation to child exploitation in the borough. As Danny said, from prevention and those workshops in schools all the way through to that specialist support, and that range of support across that spectrum of need is really important. I think the other really good thing about this borough, and it was noted by Ofsted when they came a couple of months ago, is that we've got really good multi-agency buy-in, because we know that things can go wrong, particularly when you don't have that multi-agency response to this issue. And I feel in this borough we've got a good multi-agency response. Partners don't see it just as a single children's services issue. They see that they are part of the solution. And as I said earlier on, Ofsted came to look at what we do in October last year, and they felt that we intervened and supported really well in relation to child exploitation, which is a really good sort of external measure of whether or not we're getting it right. There's always more to do, and you know, we're very fortunate to have Danny and Carly in these roles. And Carly obviously is very specialist and expert, and she is the lead essentially for all of these issues, and has done some amazing work with our young people. And I think, as Danny said, we've got the new crime and policing bill coming online, and that is going to even further strengthen what we do. So there's going to be a new statutory responsibility for individuals undertaking key roles, working with children and young people, to report sexual abuse when they become aware of it. So that mandatory reporting, I think, is really, really key. If you think there's an issue, you will have a duty to report it. And there's also been a request for police forces to review those investigations they've undertaken, particularly sort of group exploitation, where they have NFA'd, no further actioned investigations. So they're being asked to relook at some of those, and are, you know, promise they'll be given some additional support to be able to do that. But also, I also note that it's saying that individuals who have you know, they're victims, they've made allegations of child sexual abuse, and they feel they've not been taken seriously, can ask for an independent review. And as Danny said, or it was Carly, I can't remember, there will be no time limit now. You know, if it's something that they believe happened 10 years ago, they can come forward and they can ask. There's an independent panel that will be set up to be able to look at these. So I think that these measures, if they go through, will really strengthen what we do. But I am, although we've got more to do without a doubt in the borough, I'm confident with the offer that we've got, and I think we're well placed to be able to build on that good practice. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Councillor Baskerville?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you for the presentation, and also, you know, for being what appears to be on top of the situation or aware of the things. I mean, there's big numbers there. 449 attending the workshop for exploitation, 830 for digital safety, and as well as 61 parents. That's what, over 1,300 people attending these workshops. And how does that compare with the national average? You know, with this borough, for instance, is it good or bad? Or
Well, I don't think there is a national average. It's not easy to extract that information because I think different local authorities, their offer is different. We don't have one uniform offer across the country, and I think that's the issue. We do over and above, which is those sessions, those prevention sessions in school. Lots of authorities and children's services don't offer that preventative offer. They just work with young people who have been exploited or are at risk of exploitation. So I think it would be difficult to get that because we don't have that national measure. But as I say, we do more than many other authorities and probably less than some others, you know.
Just to add on that as well, I think for us, the most important thing is us trying to get to as many young people, adults, people in the community as possible to share the message and educate them around exploitation, because at the end of the day, they are the eyes and ears that are out there within the community. So if they see something, they can say something. So for us, we just want to try and keep sharing that message and spreading the word around to try and get to as many people as we can.
On that, you know, you're obviously trying to educate people, but are there many arrests of the perpetrators? Do any of them get up before the courts at all?
I don't know the exact figures, but what I know is that our close working relationship with police, we are in constant contact with them around some of our young people of concern, and we are supporting our young people with those prosecutions and taking it further. Just recently, we had a young lady who unfortunately was a victim of online sexual exploitation, and we worked with her to try and get her to a place that she was ready to actually appear in court. Fortunately, he changed his plea and he pled guilty, so she didn't have to then go through that. But we are there to provide that support then for those young people, and we will keep doing it and keep working alongside our colleagues within the police to ensure that, you know, these perpetrators are convicted. And we really push the intelligence reporting as well for all of our partner agencies, as well as, you know, us reporting anything that we have and any intelligence that we hear, because every little piece is a little piece of the jigsaw. And once you build it all together, you build up that picture so that hopefully, you know, the perpetrators can be arrested and then prosecuted.
But you know, when I first saw this item on the agenda, I had sort of overtones of Dickensian England and, you know, some latter-day Fagin or something. But it seems it's mostly online. A lot of it is where it's starting from, which is obviously a different angle from those days, 200 years ago, or whatever. But it's still worrying, the fact that it seems quite prevalent. And, you know, I'm glad we've got things in place to sort of nip it in the bud to some extent, but it's still a worry that it appears to happen so often. Is that your you know, is that what you're feeling yourself?
Yeah, it's been underreported for so long, and now we're getting some clear guidance around reporting and understanding that, you know, what is child criminal exploitation, for example. So I think that's really important, and I think that's also why the figures are starting to rise, because there's more reporting of it now. And so, yeah, we will obviously continue to keep supporting all of our young people through that process, and again, trying to work with our partner agencies to ensure that the perpetrators are you know, looked after in that regard.
Sorry, can I just add something?
Yeah, you go ahead and I'll follow up.
As Carly said, I think it's taken those national, when something's happened to Rochdale and Rotherham a number of years ago for sexual exploitation, and then obviously everyone across the country was more aware of these things, so that's when numbers appeared to go up by the data, but it would have been happening, unfortunately, to young people before that. And that's continued to be the same with the criminal exploitation as well. So I would say in our borough, I would guess, well, I'm sure compared to local boroughs around us, our numbers are low and the concerns we have are low. Obviously, it's not good that we have anyone being exploited, and that's what obviously we're working towards to stop that. But just in terms of that comparable data, our numbers would be lower than local authorities around us.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that it is tricky, you know, if you as a member of the public or as a professional come across a situation that you're a bit concerned about. And I think the important thing to say is that we want to think well of people. That's human nature, isn't it? You can't believe that this sort of thing could happen on your doorstep. Well, it does. It happens everywhere. It may not happen as much here, thankfully, as it might do in Manchester or, you know, Portsmouth or Southampton, but it does happen. And I think the important thing is that if people are uncomfortable or concerned, they can refer those concerns through to our front door, our MASH, which is a multi-agency triage service, if you like, with children's services, the police and health. They're not asking you, or we're not asking members of the public to make an assessment about what has happened. All we're asking people to do is to refer through anything that doesn't seem right to them. And then, you know, you can leave it to the professionals to do that assessment and decide on next steps. But it is difficult. I think it's difficult for people to believe that this sort of thing happens. And you know, thankfully, I think more people are aware that it does and aware of the responsibilities we all have. If we feel something isn't quite right, you know, just make that referral and then let the experts make a judgment. We're not asking members of the public, professionals necessarily, to make a judgment. You know, our teams will make that assessment when they get the information. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Councillor Da Costa.
Thank you, Chair. Another great piece of work. Well done. I've just got a few questions. So one is, how quickly can mental health support through Trust House and CAMS be obtained when you've got a young person that needs that mental health support?
From our experience, Trust House is quick. Yeah. I wouldn't say instant, but it is quick, as in you're talking weeks at most. That's from our experience with referring, potentially days. CAMS a bit different, but again, it all depends on the levels with CAMS. But yeah, Trust House would be that's where we would refer to.
Okay.
And it is picked up quickly.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to ask about whether or not you're still able to give support to young people that may not fit in with what is our package. So I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I had a young girl sent to me from a local school, and she'd been kicked out by her father. It transpired that after I chatted to her for a little while, that it was clear that she was being sexually exploited online. So I called the MASH team, but she'd had her 18th birthday the week before, and initially the school had been told there was no duty of care, but when I got involved, fortunately, they offered duty of care as a vulnerable adult. Is that still available now, or is that something that wouldn't happen now because of our tightening of finances and things?
So we were really fortunate 3 years ago to receive funding through the PCC and agreed through the CSP. So this is where we developed our Exploitation and Vulnerable Young Person Transition Service. So essentially for those young people that were 17, 18, that wouldn't necessarily meet the criteria for adult social care, but that we know exploitation doesn't stop because a young person turns 18 and they need that support. So we were really fortunate to receive that funding, and we have had a worker in place to work with that cohort, especially of young people, to support them. And like we've been finding out, it doesn't take, you know, a couple of weeks of intervention. It takes a longer period of time for those young people. And so, yeah, we've been really fortunate over the last 3 years that we've had that funding that unfortunately is due to end this financial year, and we are hoping that our new bid will be accepted through the CSP, and that work would then continue. And what we would be looking within that work is to build upon that and take it out into the community, to then offer community sessions where young people can come along to, and we can talk about things. And if we then need to pick up one-to-one direct work, we can then do that with those young people. There is an adult exploitation panel similar to our ROC panel as well, but again, there's not necessarily that, you know, intervention. So hopefully, fingers crossed that we were able to receive that funding going forward, and then that person would be an ideal candidate to, you know, to receive that support. Yes.
Councillor Davies.
Thank you. So on the support available page, the early intervention, so if there's low concerns or no evidence of current exploitation, that will lead to one-to-one education. How is a child referred to that service if there's no evidence of current exploitation?
So for that one, that could be where we're supporting them with something else. So it could be a substance misuse, someone that's using cannabis. And that could be the primary concern. And our worker thinks actually based on maybe where they're smoking the cannabis, how they're getting the cannabis, some work on exploitation is needed. So we've got no evidence they've been exploited, but if they're getting cannabis for free or on tick, how are they paying that back? Could they be exploited? So let's deliver the exploitation work now. And if they're not being exploited, at least they've got the information. So that's where that low concern element comes in, where we're supporting the young person with something else, or we're supporting a family, because again, being the family hub, it could be we're delivering some parenting intervention and the parents say actually, certainly with the digital safety side of things, it could be, oh, my child's up all night online. Whenever we walk in the room, they turn the telly off or they hide their phone. So again, there's not big concerns, but you think actually, as we're working with that family already, let's just do some work with that young person. So that's what that prevention is.
That makes a lot of sense, thank you. Also on that page, the support for parents and carers through Family Hub, how is that advertised to parents and carers?
So in terms of advertising of the website, so I know this is the prevention bit, and it's obviously we've got old posters up. We do, so last week there was Exploitation Awareness Week, so we had some tweets go out. So the parents and carers generic promotion is just for all our general work in the Family Hub. So when we're supporting families, we'll promote the website, or we'll have those conversations because we're really supporting them. But yeah, it's through your sort of older school promotional of online and hard copy posters. The more targeted work for parents is if we're working them already, or we're working the young person and we think actually let's do some work with the parents. Because again, if we're only seeing the young person once or twice a week, that parent or carer is seeing them a lot more. So let's upskill them to support their young person. But that's generally for young people, families already in our service. We are a flexible service. We'll take every referral on its merits, and it could be a family coming for one thing, and actually what we work with them on is something else, which could be exploitation. It could be any of the risks outside the homework. It could be with siblings. Again, we've worked with siblings because they're impacted potentially on their older brother or younger brother, sisters being a victim of exploitation. So again, that's very needs bespoke, depending on what that family needs. We'll adjust accordingly. And say we don't have it's 10 sessions and that's it. We're supporting as long as that family individual needs.
And our foster carers are also offered all of the training that we would offer to our staff as well. So the foster carers would receive the training that way. And likewise, if we see anything nationally that's being delivered, we would then send it to our colleagues in the fostering team, who could then share that with them as well.
Councillor Gosling.
Yes, my question is, are all the schools holding awareness sessions for all the parents, all right? Is it just the specific parents that have been, have concerns that you're dealing with? Or is this sort of in the whole of the borough?
The awareness sessions in schools are for pupils. Obviously, we promote through schools that the parents can access the websites and so forth. In terms of schools and our workshops, we're not in all schools. So it's available to all schools, but it's reliant on schools saying, you know, we want you to come in. And again, we're really flexible. So just say it's year 11 at Charters, you know, we'll give all these dates, we'll come in and deliver at a time that suits the school rather than suits us as a service. But we are reliant on schools, I suppose, freeing up their school diary to have us come in.
Yeah.
We do proactively go to some schools. So if last year there was a concern around digital imagery being shared amongst some pupils in the school, we went to the school and said, actually, we really recommend we come in and do some work. So that's us looking at the data or what we were aware of in terms of intel and us targeting the school directly. And the school did have us in, so they didn't say no.
Yeah.
So it's proactive from our point of view, but also what, schools need to sort of, accommodate us within their calendar.
Because your numbers are low, which is great, and you're doing a good job, and thank you for the presentation. But, my concern is after everybody's seen this film by now, adolescents, which is bringing this to the fore, which is great. But we all need to be aware that, if we don't spread this word around, somebody will slip under the radar. And there are families that wouldn't go to things unless they're made to. And that's what I'm concerned about. So I'm pleased to hear that you are going, but we obviously need if the schools have to approach you. So you're not approaching the schools directly, or did I get that wrong?
So we send our stuff out to schools and we will have conversations. So we're probably in all schools, anyone on a one-to-one level, as in we're supporting. We'll always say, oh, actually, we can deliver X, Y, and Z in your school. But schools have to say, actually, yes, we'll free up some time for you to come in within our calendar. Other schools, they just know we're here. Every year they'll come in and book, and they're really proactive themselves. And then there's the third set of schools, which is us looking at intel, looking at other things we're aware of through the police and saying to a school, actually, we are concerned about this in this area of the borough. Can we come to you? Because actually, we really want to make sure your pupils know about whatever the topic is. So there's different ways. And again, we will try and accommodate every school's needs. We need a bit of time because obviously if we're going into all of year 11, that could be 6, 8 classes. We need to have the staff resource. But as I mentioned earlier, we stay clear of assemblies because we want to have the interaction with the young person, which you can do in small groups. And occasionally we will identify behaviours in a young person that we're concerned about, and we can then speak to the teacher about how they may have responded verbally or physically to things that are said, and it then might identify safeguarding needs, which again, you can do that in assembly.
Councillor Barr?
Thank you. A couple of my questions been asked. Say if some parents don't come forward, does a school teacher can pick something up? A teacher comes forward and sort of reports things to you that they're worried about the child being exploited?
Yeah, so they would go through the front door, which Lynn mentioned earlier, of children's services. So schools, workshops, they come directly to us. So there's no concern about a child. It's just, let's give them the education. If they're concerned about a child or family, it's through the front door. And then social care will look at it and decide, whether it's comes to us or the longer term social care team. And that's where, as Lynn said, the experts will look at it. So if a school are worried about a child or family, they would go through their normal safeguarding routes that they'll be aware of.
Some children, they just don't listen to the parents and they don't want to obviously come forward. How do you work with them then?
So if they'll engage with us, we'll engage with them. And at the same time, we'll try and build that relationship between the parent and young person. It's a bit like anything we do with children and young people in the family hub or across children's services. We can't be around forever. So even though we haven't got a timeline, if a child's 8, we can't necessarily stay with them until they're 18. So we'll do our work, but we'll also try and build that family relationships resilience. So then when we do feel it's appropriate to stop support, that relationship has improved. Sometimes we may just work with the young person. It could be a teacher in a school. So actually that's that trusted adult. We'll always try and identify a trusted adult in that child's life. Most of the time it's someone in the family, but we appreciate it's not all the time. So it could be a teacher. It could be someone in the community that they trust. So we will, again, it's that bespoke, and we'll have it's called a family network meeting, but it's more than just the family. It's that wider support. We'll generally have one of those, and who else can support that child within that family network. So again, when we finish, it may not be the parent that they will go to, but it could be an uncle, an aunt, or a close friend. So yeah, again, that's what we try and do.
Councillor Conneran.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, really helpful. I know from sort of safeguarding training for being school governor, things like that, that when there are bad outcomes, it does tend to be because something was missed, that something wasn't reported. And I think, as Lynn, you're saying that there's now a statutory duty on professionals. Can you explain that to me a little bit more? Like who those, is it just teachers or adults in general, or just to make that clear to me what that statutory duty is, and also what the negatives, not negatives the wrong word, but what the consequence for that person would be if they did miss something, if they'd missed that statutory duty to say or do something. And yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's going through, it's a bill that came out, it was February, I think, and it will go through the parliamentary process. So we're hoping that will be brought in, but it is predominantly for professionals. And the expectation is that if a professional who works with the child has got concerns of that nature, they have got a mandatory duty to report. Whereas previously, you know, it's all been, you know, if you come across anything, you need to make a referral, but it's not a statutory responsibility. So this is saying essentially there will be, you know, if it turns out a child has been exploited, that a professional was aware potentially that there was an issue and didn't report it, and that comes to light, there would be consequences for that professional.
Okay, I guess the only concern around that is that if there was an innocent reason why it was missed, then that person as a trusted adult gets the blame for something that really wasn't. But equally, I do understand that that is where outcomes go wrong. So that's a really tough balance, really difficult one. I'm just concerned what the consequence would be for that innocent person in that situation.
Yeah. And I think there will be different ways of looking at that. I think you're absolutely right. There will be some situations where it's more about learning because, yeah, something was missed in the professional group or whatever it was. But, you know, we have had situations where when things have come to light, we've had professionals say, but I knew this was happening. I knew it was happening, but I thought that people might laugh at me or tell me I was overreacting, which is why I'm saying if you have got that concern, refer it through and let the experts make a decision. You know, we're not asking that person necessarily, we're not asking housing officer, you know, who goes into a house and is concerned to make a judgment. It's just about something feels uncomfortable, refer it through. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, and I think that what the inquiry has shown is that some professionals knew certain things that were happening to some of the young people, and obviously bringing this in and saying it's a mandatory reporting, it's obviously hoped that nothing will be then missed going forward for those young people, that they're not constantly telling different professionals and different people in their lives that something has happened to them. That is then being dealt with accordingly through the relevant, obviously reporting it through the police, so that these perpetrators can then be prosecuted. So it's kind of just ensuring that that is kind of taking place for us, as you know, we kind of use it as a bit of a tagline. If you see something, just say something. But whatever you've seen, again, it can build a bit of a picture up for that young person. It could be something, it could be nothing, but at least we've explored it and then worked with that young person. And as Danny says, within, you know, the support that the Family Hub offer, you could start working with somebody under, you know, one remit, but actually uncover and identify other things. So again, if you hadn't have reported something that you felt maybe minor, actually, you know, we've now crossed the path and we're now looking at other interventions for that young person.
You look poised. Did you want to say something? No. Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. You've talked about the good work you've done in schools, but I just wanted to ask what work has been done for approaching people in electives home education for this kind of thing?
So last year, I think it was November, we offered workshops to electively home educated young people. And again, that was all free. There's a Windsor Family Hub. And that was across our whole spectrum of workshops, and not just exploitation, it was drug and alcohol and stuff. So that is something we're offering now regularly to electively home educated children. There's not massive numbers of young people but there are some. So if they don't receive it from us, and they're not going to school, you then obviously relying on the family giving it. So that is something we introduced at the back end of last year. And again, we signpost parents to have a look at for that cohort of young people to again have a look themselves and upskill themselves. But we also offer the workshops ourselves in one of our family hubs.
Anyone else have any questions or comments they'd like to make on this agenda item? Nobody? Okay, thank you very much for your report. Councillor Singh, I think if you just raised your hand, I've been told.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I haven't got any questions. Just a comment really on that one was the presentation was very good. Danny, thank you very much for that. I just wanted to say that it would have been really good to have that uploaded onto the agenda before the meeting. I don't know why you sort of you leave it to the verbal one, but what it is sometimes just looking at it from my own personal angle, it's a lot of information there to take in. It'd been really good to sort of have that beforehand so I could just sort of digest the information and see if there's any questions from it. But that's just a comment from me. But other than that, well done on the work you guys are doing. It's a very difficult area, and obviously I know the numbers are low, but it's an increase in sort of complexity of this issue. So yeah, I look forward to the new programme, and hopefully that'll be updated and rolled out as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll ensure that a copy of the presentation is circulated via Mark, if that's okay, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Lynn. Cheers.
Sorry, apologies, I've got the hiccups. Moving on to agenda item 5, which is the relocation of the Jubilee ward. I believe it is Steve and Martha who are joining us online presenting.
Good evening, Chair. Yes, thanks ever so much. Thanks again for having us. My colleague Steve is going to share the slides, if that's all right. So, Steve, thank you. And this presentation is regarding the relocation of the Jubilee ward. Jubilee ward is in Upton Hospital in Slough and relocating to St Mark's in Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. And just to say that this work has been done in partnership. The Berkshire Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust have been working with us in partnership on this, and unfortunately they can't make it this evening. So Steve and I may need to go back with questions, but just to assure the panel tonight that this work has been carried out in partnership, and they of course are the provider of the Jubilee ward services as they are. So the current situation is that the Jubilee ward is a short stay inpatient ward at Upton Hospital. As I said, that's in central Slough, and the ward provides rehab, rehabilitation and discharge support for those patients who need care between acute hospital and before they go home. And this is one of the last of the Nightingale wards, those very long corridor types of wards, and Jubilee ward was actually built in the early 1900s, so it is very old, and the ward is sadly no longer fit for purpose. So to maintain clinical safety, the bed capacity has been reduced from 22 beds down to 16 beds, and we're unable to support patients with more complex needs anymore. For example, those those bariatric patients, larger size, plus size patients who are unable to use the ward because they have different needs. Jubilee ward is Berkshire-wide service, and most patients are residents of Slough and the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. And when Berkshire Healthcare Trust did a look back between July and December in 2023, there was an average of 53% of Jubilee ward admissions who were not Slough residents, and conversely in the same period an average of about 18% of Henry Tudor ward, those in St Mark's in RBWM, admissions were Slough residents, so residents from both areas. And in terms of assessing the options, Berkshire Healthcare Trust had an independent options appraisal carried out, which showed that St Mark's exceeded all of the Upton hospital options and in terms of quality and longevity. So what we would expect for a hospital ward to be fit for the future. So the conclusion came that refurbing the existing Charles ward in St Mark's in RBWM was the preferred option, offering improved quality of care, value for money, shorter timescales to completion, and a more sustainable use of existing NHS space, existing NHS assets. Thank you. And the clinical benefits also have included modern clinical environment and facilities. Co-locating these wards will increase the access to more consultant and senior clinical time, and there'll be more opportunity for patients and their carers to discuss treatment options and discharge plans. And it's anticipated there will be better response times if patients need to be seen quickly, and patients are less likely to need to return to acute hospital care. So in that options appraisal and then planning in terms of looking at what the new Charles ward would be like, instead of 16 beds, it would have 21 beds. There would be side rooms with ensuite facilities. That's not available at the moment. As I said earlier, bariatric patients are unable to be supported in Jubilee ward. There will be specialist bariatric beds available. There'll be an improved gym area and dining room and garden access for patients and visitors, as well as improved staff rest area. And I'm going to hand over now to Steve, who's going to provide us the stakeholder engagement update. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Martha, much appreciated. So yeah, I'm just going to run through the next few slides which focus on the public patient and stakeholder engagement exercise that has been taking place to support this work. It is the responsibility of NHS Frimley as the Integrated Care Board to carry out that engagement work as the commissioners of the service, but we worked very much in partnership with Berkshire Healthcare to carry out this work. So we started back in October and the engagement ran through to the end of January. We've now finished that analysis of all the feedback that we got and produced a final formal report, which I'm summarising today, but that formal report will be ready to share and in the public domain within the next couple of weeks. So we will be able to share that afterwards as well. There was a range of work that we did. We intentionally focused this work to ensure that we were getting meaningful feedback from those that are most likely to be impacted by this move. So we did focus on speaking to patients that currently or recently have used the service in Slough, but also those that are using similar services in Maidenhead. We also made every effort we could to speak to visitors of those patients. And we also had the ability for members of the public, staff and stakeholders to take part and provide their views as well. It's worth saying we do give a summary in the next couple of slides around staff engagement, but obviously it's Berkshire Healthcare who are responsible for that element of this work. So you can see there we did a number of surveys and had 78 responses, quite detailed feedback within those surveys, and I'll summarise what they said in a couple of minutes. We've had information on our websites, both for NHS Frimley and for Berkshire Healthcare, with views well up into the hundreds for those. We also sent information out via Frimley Hospital Trust and Berkshire Healthcare to their members via their newsletters, so that reached over 10,000 people. We sent out press releases to ensure that we had as much information out there in the public domain as possible. That was picked up in articles in both Maidenhead and Slough. And we've also been supporting the work with social media. So you can see some numbers there, but thousands of people having the ability to click through to more information and hundreds doing so. Community partnerships really key in this piece of work. We're always conscious when we carry out engagement work that we don't want it all to be online. We want to go and have conversations with people as well. We've got a number of partnerships with local community and voluntary sector organisations. So some examples here of the work we did working with Health Watch, with our Council of Voluntary Services in Slough and our RBWM voluntary networks. So a whole range of organisations kindly shared information for us and allowed us to come along to their events, including older people's forums, carers' rights days, and voluntary sector networking events. So we had members of staff going out, talking to people, providing information and giving people the opportunity to find out more and take part. Where people gave us feedback in those face-to-face settings, that was recorded and included as well. We've been to a number of community meetings, and obviously we are here this evening, and we similarly went to Slough Scrutiny Committee last month. I mentioned staff engagement earlier, so around 40 ward staff at Jubilee in Slough are affected by a potential move. So plans were shared by the Trust with the staff at an early stage, and staff have had regular opportunities to share both their ideas for what new services might look like, but also their concerns, and they're being actively supported through that process. Obviously, a change like that is difficult and different for everybody, but staff being well supported, and as we understand it, staff, if they want to work in the new ward in Maidenhead, then they will be able to, but a formal staff consultation will be forthcoming in the coming months, should the relocation go ahead. So what did the feedback tell us? I'll run through this quickly, but patients were asked to provide their views. Now, obviously, the patients at Jubilee Ward and Henry Tudor Ward in Maidenhead are often quite unwell, often quite frail and elderly. So staff, working with staff, they kindly visited new patients every week throughout the engagement period and supported patients where patients wanted to give their feedback, they were supported to do so. Often that meant that staff would help them to fill in a physical paper form, which was then sent through to us. And if they were able to, they could fill it out online. So there was some support for patients to provide that feedback. When they responded to the survey, overwhelmingly, they said access to physical rehabilitation and visibility of staff was really important to them. I think that's interesting and talks perhaps to the nature of that older style of ward, perhaps not being conducive to some of the needs of patients. Feedback on the move from patients was mixed. I guess it's not a surprise, but it's worth noting, obviously, those that were staying in Jubilee Ward that are currently in Slough had a preference for keeping services in Slough. Particularly if they were Slough residents. Those staying in Henry Tudor Ward in Maidenhead were more positive about the relocation. Obviously, it's a service that is coming to their area. Visitors said much the same as patients in terms of what was most important to them when thinking about a new ward, that access to physical rehabilitation. That is obviously the key purpose of the ward, and visibility of staff. The majority of visitors said that they visit every single day. Generally, patients are not there for a huge amount of time. It'd be between 2 and 4 weeks. But obviously a visit every day is something that wants to be supported. The majority of visitors we spoke to said that they got to there by car and found it fairly easy or very easy to do so. All patients will continue to be transported to and from the ward wherever that ward is. That's the responsibility of the NHS. And there is free parking at St Mark's for visitors, and there are no current plans for that to change. Staff that completed surveys and provided feedback were generally understanding of the need to close the current ward to maintain that safety. Some voiced concerns about the travel implications for staff and visitors, but others praised the innovation and better working environment that comes with a purpose-built solution. Broadly, public feedback has been in support of the relocation. There are some concerns that are raised about wider services in Slough, availability of wider services in Slough, and some around transport implications that were raised in that space as well. The full and formal report on all of this work is going through the various governance and committees that you would expect it to at Berkshire Healthcare this month, where formal decisions will be made as to whether this relocation will take place. But assuming that that is the case, then from approval, planning and construction, it's expected to take around 18 months. So that new ward will be open at St Mark's in Maidenhead, hopefully by autumn 2026. So I will stop there for now. I know there's a lot of information to take in, but we're more than happy to take some questions.
Thank you both. It seems like a lifetime since we spoke about bringing this to panel. I think it was September last year, so it's great that you're both here, and to have that update is brilliant. Councillor Gosling, I believe you're first.
Yes, I wanted to know the type of patients, the complex needs, and they're in there for a short time. So are they a particular age group, or could somebody explain that to me? I should know, but I don't.
Yes, so it's a rehabilitation ward. So the average age of the patients is actually 83. And when we say complex, they may have multifactorial comorbidities. So very generally more than 2 or 3 conditions. And the complexity of the nature of being complex will require considerable specialist clinical care. Thank you.
Type of operation. So could you enlarge on that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Sorry about that.
This okay. Sorry about that. The word bariatric, I'm not a medical person. What does that fat? What? Big. I thought that was the stomach. Bariatric operations of halving the size of the stomach. Yeah, is that correct? You're doing operations there? Is that? No,
indeed.
Oh, I see. After they've had a stomach. No. Yeah.
Yes. Some of even my clinical colleagues describe patients as plus size patients. Those patients who carry additional and who are overweight, who have a much higher body mass index, and will have had operations indeed to do with their bariatric surgery, which of course is to reduce, as you say, the stomach. Thank you.
Just acting as chair temporarily, hopefully. Councillor Baskerville, you're next.
Thank you. I just missed out a little bit on the presentation there. The staff situation, will people be moving from Slough or Upton to St Mark's, or will you get extra staff in to cover the St Mark's area in due course? Because I can appreciate the fact that it's difficult to get staff in, particularly this area where cost of housing is so high. It must be difficult to attract people and keep them as well.
And our understanding is that staff that are currently working at Jubilee Ward in Slough will be able to continue that employment and work in the new ward in Maidenhead. But Berkshire Healthcare are responsible for the formal staff engagement and consultation process that will be taking place over the coming months. But as we said in the presentation, the staff are being well supported and have got ample opportunity to feedback and be involved and share their views and concerns throughout the process. But our understanding is, that those staff can remain if they want to.
Yes, the only thing I had to have a slight chuckle with is people in Slough worried about getting over to Maidenhead. I mean, welcome to our world in Maidenhead. We've been like this for the last 30 odd years. And, it's just a bit of a Bermuda Triangle in terms of coverage in the Wexham and Frimley area. I mean, if ever you have to go over to Wexham or Heatherwood or even Frimley, it's 11 plus miles for people in Maidenhead. And unless you've got a car, it's a very difficult situation. And you have to rely on other people to give you a lift. Or, I mean, the public services in terms of buses and that are a bit variable. So if you've got a car, fine. But if you haven't, I mean, it is a major problem. And the one bonus, as far as I'm concerned, with St Mark's is I can walk there. So it'd be a bit easier for me, although will I be able to walk there when I'm 83 is another matter, of course.
Shall I come in, Steve?
Councillor Coward Acosta, please, you're next.
So I've just got a couple of questions. So the side rooms, are they in addition to the 21 ward rooms, or are they all side rooms?
That's a good question. And Martha, I don't know if you know the answer to that. Something we'll have to take back to Berkshire Healthcare to get the full detail. My understanding is that I think there's a mixture, but I'd have to go back and double check. So we can provide that answer to you.
I think the current evidence is that some people like to be in smaller wards of 4, and then other people like to have the privacy of a side room. So to have a combination is usually most helpful, particularly when you're looking at older patients. I wanted to know about the staff. Are staff likely to lose their jobs, or will they be 2P'd, or will they be 2P'd into Frimley Health at some point if there's no jobs for them over at St Mark's?
So the staff work for Berkshire NHS Foundation Trust. So they will continue to have the same terms and conditions and contracts. It's just that their location of where they're delivering their care is different. Instead of being in Upton
so
Park
there's no risk of job loss?
No, there's no.
Okay, that's good. So we can reassure people of that. That's really good. And do we know what possible plans are for Upton?
It's a very good question, and I don't have all the full details, but we can provide those to you. Yes,
Thank you.
we can go back and make sure that you get some details. Thank you.
And then I've just got one other observation, which is a concern for me, and that is because Berkshire Health and Frimley Health are 2 different trusts. Sometimes results are not shared between the 2 trusts, and really I'd like to know that we've got reassurance that that information will be transferred, because I have a resident who is waiting for a hip replacement, and he had a CT scan done at King Edward, which is Berkshire Health. He's waiting to have the hip replacement done at Heatherwood, which is Frimley, and neither of them are sharing the results of the CT scan. So he's now missed the opportunity for an operation next week. He's potentially got one at the end of April, but only if these results are shared. So can you give me some kind of reassurance that tests results will be shared to enable a seamless and timely care?
Thank you for raising that, Councillor. It's incredibly important. For Steve and I, we work in NHS Frimley Integrated Care Board, so we don't get involved in direct delivery of health and care, but we can absolutely take that back. And if you would be able to provide non-identifiable information to us to share that case example, we're more than happy. I'll certainly be more than happy to
do that. Yeah, it's really important, because this poor gent's like unable to walk around, and it's affecting his mental health now. So it's really important that we have that integrated system.
Yes, indeed, and we're very keen that we integrate effectively. So it's a good example. Thanks ever so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Barr.
Thank you, Chair. Just a really good opportunity for Maidenhead. I really welcome the move. My only worry is travelling. Will you be talking to like bus services or anybody so that there are services to St Mark's if people are travelling from further apart, like Slough or, you know, other areas?
Yeah, do you want me to take this one, Martha? Sorry, you dropped out slightly there as you were giving the question, but I think the question was around the need to consider public transport for those in Slough. And yeah, absolutely, that's something that we are undertaking as part of the engagement exercise. So we have heard from, particularly from residents in Slough, that that is a potential concern. As part of the engagement exercise, we've mapped out the public transport options for people so that we can be really clear and transparent about what the current service is. It is not the responsibility of the NHS or Berkshire Healthcare Trust to provide that public transport, obviously. So we're very limited in our ability to make any changes, but we're being very clear about what is available for local people, and that includes voluntary sector transport options as well. All of which being shared as part of the engagement process. I think we would be have very limited ability to influence public transport provision, though.
All right, if there are no more questions, just like to thank Martha and Steve for the presentation, answering all our questions. Move on to agenda item 6, an education standards report to be introduced by Lynn Ferguson.
Okay, thank you very much. This is an annual report on educational standards in the borough. So I would, without further ado, like to introduce Clive Haynes, who's our Deputy Director for Education, and colleagues. And maybe when you speak, you can just introduce Claire and Helen. Brilliant, thank you.
I have got a quick slideshow to go through this as a summary, but before I do that, I want to introduce my colleagues. This is Claire Murray, who's part of our school improvement team, and she's also the principal for the Schools Direct, which is on the PowerPoint presentation. And we've got Helen Daniels, who also supports the school improvement team and also is a current head within the Borough Primary School. Okay. Okay, while we're waiting for that to come up. So this report sets out our academic achievements for 22-23. So we're currently on 24-25 now. So it goes back nearly a year. But the reason that is because we don't get the public data from the Department of Education until well into this new academic year. The education report, when it comes up, I'll go through it, currently highlights that our Ofsted judgment in what I'm going to class as old money at the moment, because there is no overall grading for schools, which are going through an Ofsted, so we don't have an overall judgment, but we convert those into an overall judgment. We're currently at 89% good to outstanding schools, which is just slightly below the national. That is because we've got 6 schools that requires improvement. 2 of those are maintained schools and 2 are academy schools. 4 other academy schools, sorry. So the early years, which is where it all begins. Currently, when this report was written, we took the outstanding, good to outstanding measure, and the private voluntary sector, we actually had 100% good to outstanding private and voluntary nurses, which is a good result because that will feed into our school. So I'm on performance ranking now. Sorry, Mark, if you could go through a couple of slides, that'd be great. And the next one. So performance ranking, this is what's out in the public domain, and we're going for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 at this stage. So early years, good level of development. We're currently at 71%, which is above the national average at 68%. which ranks us 25th on the league table. Phonics screening, that's 81%, so that's 1% above the national. And Key Stage 1, this is a combined score of reading, writing and maths. We were slightly below this year by 1%, we're 60%, as national was 61%. And that was due to our writing. Our writing is moderated by teachers within the school. We also have to go out and do a 25% moderation of schools as a local authority. And we realised through that moderation process that actually some of the teachers were under moderating the children's writing. So this year we've done a lot of preparation in that writing moderation, peer moderation, to ensure that result won't reflect through. So our overall combined score was affected by our writing, which brought it down by 1%. Thank you, Mark. One of our priorities is our disadvantage gap. And currently at Key Stage 2, we have fallen well below the national. The gap is getting wider. It's in the report. We are working on how to do that, which we will explain that in a minute. But what the good news is, at the end of Key Stage 4, the disadvantaged pupils do make progress above the national. So they do make it up when they get to Key Stage 4, but that's not good enough. We want them to get it at Key Stage 2 so they can perform even better at Key Stage 4. So we've addressed this disadvantage gap for a number of years. We've looked at different ways of doing this, talk to other local authorities to see if there's anything we're missing out, what are we doing wrong. And it all came down to the Quality Teach First programme, which is something we invested last year in our school, so it won't actually come through till this year's results. That's what we're hoping. So there's been a big programme working with Tom Sheridan. He's a national kind of trainer in this field. It's called the Walkthrough Project, and I will let, actually, if that's okay, Claire talk about more of this because she's been leading the project for the last year and a half. Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, thank you. So as a local authority, yes, we've got a big disadvantage gap. And we've been working with or just starting to work with an expert in the field, Mark Rowland, who has been a government advisor for the last 14 years on disadvantage. And he's worked with similar local authorities like ours, because one of the biggest issues we've got in RBWM is scattered disadvantage. So we have pockets or small numbers of disadvantage in our schools, which actually is not acceptable. We're not saying that, but it does make each child have a very high percentage. And our neighbouring authorities like Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire have similar scattered disadvantage like us. So I think the word that we've both been coming and saying, this is a really wicked issue, a real wicked problem across, and there isn't a golden nugget, but we've come from the process of actually quality first teaching. And that is, so every single teacher, because of the scattered disadvantage, knows their responsibility. They are looking at being the most effective teachers they possibly can. So we've gone through, first of all, an instructional coaching programme, working, as Clive said, with an expert. It's really looking at pedagogy and teaching strategies in the classroom. But with Lynn and with Helen and a few other key people, we've put it as a real focus through working. We've got, Helen and I went to a conference through AFC. We've been negotiating with Mark Rowland, and we're in the process of him coming to work with us as a local authority, because we've got schools working very, very hard. We've got very, very dedicated staff. We run a network for pupil premium that is incredibly well attended, and people are really looking for that golden nugget all of the time. But we're going to build on issues like our quality first teaching, and working alongside that, really starting to look at understanding what it means in terms of low income, what it means in terms of the vocabulary gap, which are some of the barriers to learning in our local authority. Is there anything you want to add on that, Helen? No. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Can we go to the Key Stage 4, which is a couple of slides, please? Next one. So now on to our Key Stage 4. So overall, 52% of our pupils in Windsor and Maidenhead achieved English and Maths GCSE, and that is at grade 5 or above, which is well above the national at 45.9. And the percentage of pupils attaining English and Math GCSE at grade 4, so that's the one grade below, which is the median grade, so that's the grade that's expected. Anything above that is great as well. So we had a 70% achieve this, which is well above the national average of 65%. Thank you. So last academic year, our skit, we have a skit which Claire actually runs. It's a program where we actually train candidates to become qualified teachers. We take around about a cohort of 25 to 30 each year. Last year we did 14 primary trainees and 11 secondary. 100% of them gained their qualification to be able to teach, so QTS status, and or 100% went into jobs of employment. We also had a thematic Ofsted review in January 25, and we received very positive feedback about the programme. So we wanted to highlight as one of our successes this year as well. Thank you, Mark. Attendance is a big issue at the moment. Nationally, attendance is dropping. We in RBWM are still relatively equal on national on attendance. We have a actual programme on attendance. We have a lead of attendance. We have attendance network meetings with schools, and we're currently sitting around about the average or above average, which compared to our neighbours, we are doing very well on attendance. And it's a programme that we are going to keep doing, because if they don't attend school, they're not learning and not going to get the results that we just spoke about. Thank you, Mark. Exclusions, as you can see from this table, our exclusions reduced in 22-23. However, in 22 and 23, we did see a spike in primary exclusions, and that was a concern for us. So last year we did a lot of work on the primary exclusions and wondered what's going on, what's happening. So we opened up a lot of school readiness programs. We've done a lot of work with ERSA, so it's emotional school avoidance. And I can say this year, touching wood, we've not had a primary excluded pupil as an impact of that work. However, we are heading for 24-25 to reduce that figure from 22. I don't want to say it too openly at the moment, because we've still got a couple of months of the academic year to go, but we're looking like that exclusion work. We've done a lot of work with schools into working about what's the barriers, why are they excluded, let's work before we can get to that stage. But sometimes it's we can't, because of the policies of schools may dictate that it's an exclusion because of the mechanism of exclusions being sanctioned. Thank you, Mark. Okay, SEND, I just wanted to mention SEND quickly. SEND, we're reaching our national compliance, in which we have to complete our education and healthcare plans. We're reaching them at 100% every month, which is really good. We had a dip in January, it went down to 80, but national is just above 50, which is 55%. So RBWM is completing the statutory duty when it comes to EHCP plans. So we did complete assessments completed in 20-week statutory timescales, remains between 80 and 100%. But compared to our neighbour local authorities and national local authorities, we're actually top of the league table where that's concerned. So that's really good news. It means that we've got a stable team of coordinators that assess the EHCPs, and we have quality assurance around those EHCPs as well. So it's all right us getting the EHCPs on time, but what's the quality around that? So we have a robust quality assurance about the content of the EHCPs. Thank you, Mark. I just wanted to put this up here to tell you this is what we've got in the borough, and this is a result of what the data is telling us about what the need is out in the borough. So we really look at the data and the needs in the local authority, and then that's when we look at what's required regarding resource base or SEND units. So resource base is where a child will spend 50% of the time in the resource base, and they will also spend 50% in the school. So if the school's connected to a resource base, that's the idea, to integrate them back into the mainstream schools. As you can see, we've got a full list of the resource base there. I won't go through it. I just wanted to highlight that we've got a SEND unit, and a SEND unit is the more complex cases that we have with EHCP, which will probably mean they will spend 75% of the time in a SEND unit and 25% in the mainstream school to reintegrate them as they go through the mainstream. And then we have our special schools. We have the Manor Green, we have Forest Bridge, special schools in the borough. We have got a delay on the special school for the SEMH programme that's hoping to come online 26. That's no longer 26, it's looking more like 27. And then we have the outreach support, which is supplied by one of our special schools, Manor Green, and one of our secondary schools called Shine. And that's outreach program that goes to schools which don't have resource spaces to support children where needed. Thank you. Mark. Okay, so the data was telling us that cognition learning was a thing that was coming up in our data. It's slowly creeping up. So we're going to be opening a special unit. It's called a resource-based unit at Jubilee Middle School. That's coming online in September 2025. I mentioned the future plans of the special school. We're hoping it's 27. We've got September 28 there because they keep slipping. But we definitely feel it should be by September 28. And also, Cabinet approved the expansion for a number of places at Manor Green, up to another 20 additional places, which we need because there's a shortage of special school placements. And this is really good news, the addition of a sixth form at Forest Bridge School, which is a really exciting progress for our children, especially at the sixth form age, because there isn't much sixth form available for children with the HCPs. Thank you, Mark. So just to quickly summarise before we open up to questions. So we feel our successes are the education, the quality of education, strong performance in early years, as I mentioned, and that's coming through the system. Progress for disadvantaged at Key Stage 4, but not at Key Stage 2, because that is an area of development which is below on our areas for improvement. Successful teacher training. I do believe the fact that we've been running this programme actually contributes to the fact that we don't have, I would say, as much of an issue with recruiting teachers in this borough as our other neighbouring boroughs do. So that's good news. And we are good at our attendance rates as well, and we continue to exceed the national averages, which is what the DfE requires us to do. So areas for improvement, we talked about it. Key Stage 2 performance is slightly below national by 1% due to writing. We've got a lot of training into that this year for moderation. And of course, that disadvantage gap, that's one of our biggest improvements that we want to work on, because we feel if we can narrow that gap with the approach that we've got, that Claire's just explained, we're hoping that we'll be able to close the gap next year. Okay, that's the summary of the report that you've had in full. So any questions?
Thank you, Clive. Another strong report's been put before us. We'll open the floor with Councillor Coward-Acosta.
Thank you. So it's really good to see that the early years has improved, because I know during the pandemic we had issues with those early years because young children hadn't socialised and were struggling. So well done on getting that improved. It's a bit disappointing to see the drop in Key Stage 2. I'm wondering if that's just still a knock-on from those children that were struggling when they first started to go to school, and that those issues haven't been fully resolved. So I'd like to know your opinion on that. And then the disadvantage gap, it's very, very worrying as a councillor and somebody who's in a ward where there's a school that has probably one of those little pockets of disadvantaged children. That's really worrying. It's good to see that you're recognising it and that you're wanting to do something about it. I would like you to come back maybe in 18 months' time and report back to us and tell us how far you've got on that. It would be really good for us to see progress in that area so that we can scrutinise what's going on, because it's really important that disadvantaged children are not left behind. It's Dickensian, really. I just need to ask the question, the children that have had that drop in Key Stage 2 compared to the children in Key Stage 4, are they going to make up that? Or are we looking at children that were okay when we had a good Key Stage 2 that are now okay in Key Stage 4? Or are we going to see this early years, Key Stage 2, are we going to see that follow those children up through the school years? And then my other question was, do the teachers that are trained with us remain with us? And then I just wanted to end by saying well done for the readiness for schoolwork, because I know how important that is. So I've just reeled off loads of questions, sorry. So
So first of all, can I just say the early years disadvantage did better this year, as you'll
Yeah.
see from the report. So we're thinking that the working we're doing is feeding through and follow through, but that's still a big process to do. Key stage 2, Hannah.
So with regards to Key Stage 2, I think the important thing is to recognise that it's a measure of combined. So there might well be schools who, for example, 80% of children reach expected in maths and reading, but obviously if only 60% get there in writing, it reduces combined. So actually we've still got high standards in our maths and in our reading. And so as well as Clive said, what we've looked at is how we support in particular, Year 6 teachers who are doing that final moderation, but obviously all teachers going through the school. And we've also run training as a local authority to support schools, whatever scheme they're using for writing, in terms of developing their writing. Our current Year 6 cohort, I know, for example, I'm talking from personal experience, we're doing extra handwriting work, for example, because that's the cohort that missed their Year 1, 2, where we know that things like letter formation, we didn't always have teachers watching over while they were doing that. So absolutely, I think there were some gaps there.
Yeah, I've got gaps. Who's in that gap?
Yeah.
So yes. So and then the Key Stage 2, as they move into Key Stage 4, are we expecting that to be better or?
I think the demands on writing to reach expected at end of Key Stage 2 are really high. And I think, I can't speak for the profession, but I know lots of other heads that I talk to would very much like to see any curriculum changes that will be going to Parliament for us to reduce actually what we're expecting of children in terms of their writing, because it's really complex. And our secondary colleagues say to us that actually the expectations simply aren't the same. So I would really hope with writing that actually that won't be to the detriment of the children in terms of a move to Key Stage 3.
Can I just also say that currently there's a curriculum review going on, and one of the recommendations is to look at the moderation and the writing at Key Stage 2, because it's open to being subjective, and teachers are tending to be very, very harsh on their marking. And then when you've got a combined score, it can bring it down. So it's recognised nationally as well as Key Stage RBWM.
So last week, an interim report was produced with regards to the curriculum consultation. And it went through some of the things that they've already identified that they'll be looking at in terms of the curriculum review.
And I think it was a trend
And
as well.
about the trained teachers that are trained within the borough, do they need
Yes.
to stay?
Yes.
I kind of think they did.
Yes, currently retention is, I think, 86% over 5 years. But you can only walk into our schools and it is full of people that have been training, because we've been doing this training programme since 2002. And we're pleased to say that, you know, we have head teachers, deputy head teachers, leaders that have all come through the programme. So yes, retention is very high. And I think if we decide to train in Windsor, Windsor and Maidenhead, it's not cheap to live here. They're tending to stay. They've thought about it, yeah.
I think from what I've noticed is people who go into that kind of training already live here and they have their families here, so they want to remain, which makes it so much better than them going off somewhere else to train.
We have over 50% career changes that,
yes. Yeah, excellent. And then it was just me saying well done for the readiness for schoolwork, because I know how important that is. Yes, I know.
As well, so yeah.
It's real success stories.
Yes, we do.
Okay, next up we have Mark Jervis.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I have 3 questions. Quickly on Key Stage 2, to carry on that theme, we're generally in the bottom half of results nationally. Is that just about writing, or are there other initiatives to improve that?
Yeah.
And can you explain why we're in the lower half?
Because I think our teachers are under moderating the pupils, because when we did our moderation last year, we actually moved, and that is these moderators are trained by they have to do a training with the DFE, they have to pass to be able to be moderators. When they went into schools, they actually upped the scoring in those schools. So that recognised to us that we need to do moderation training about that and about what it could look like. And I think, as Helen said, they kind of under predict it. So we've done a lot of training about what it actually is for this year. But it was, yeah, that's the bit that's bringing our combined score down.
So on the, it's really good that you've recognised the disadvantage, and that's a key theme that's going on, and obviously appreciate there's no golden solution to that. How closely is the impact of the initiatives that you have in place, the kind of quality first teaching, being tracked so you can drive changes or refinements to the strategy? And what would be the expectation for the results this year?
So basically, walkthroughs are a way of codifying teaching. And so it's what the books have done is they take various teaching processes and put them into 5 steps. And schools wouldn't take on all of them, there's hundreds. But what Tom Sherrington encourages schools to do is identify where their problems are. So let's say it might be around questioning of pupils. So there are all sorts of different areas. And so what heads and senior leaders have looked at doing is really trying to think about, through learning walks in their school, what do we need to work on? And some schools will have whole strategies that they work on together, and some might have different teachers doing different things. And so really, I'd say, as a head teacher, that's very much down to head teachers in terms of their school development plans to track the walkthroughs they're doing and how those are being implemented and the impact they're having. Because some might be to do with behaviour, some might be to do with curriculum design, some might be to do with actual strategies in the classroom, if that makes sense.
Can I just, but as a local authority, in addition, schools signed up to a 3-year project for this. So we, for example, last week, leaders, so at strategic level, head teachers and senior leaders attended again another day. So where it was revisiting, refreshing, making sure it's not just another initiative that goes off the back burner. It's a 3-year project, and it's about continuing to upskill all staff as they come on they're new. As link advisors, we also go in and do focused reviews and learning walks to see that this is the language that is being spoken. And we invited a new cohort of schools to join the programme again this year. And you know, it's not like we want to produce a school of robots where they're all speaking, but it's about precision and about everyone speaking, like you said, this codified language that is really everyone being given it the best they can. So does that help answer the monitoring that's going on?
It does, yeah. So obviously there's a whole load of different initiatives that have to be brought together, but being 149th out of 152 is clearly a statistical outlier and needs a lot of focus to bring that to something.
And I think that's one strand. I think the other thing is, as a local authority, we're really, really looking at this now, and running alongside that is upping the game with working with Mark Rowland. As I said,
yeah.
his life is 14 years working on closing the gap, and we've gone that step farther now with Lynn supporting fully with this.
And I suppose the issue is, as we all know, that disadvantage in educational attainment is not just about education. For some of our families, it's about housing, it's about access to food, it's about, you know, it's about all sorts of factors, hence it being such a wicked problem. And so, you know, I think we're very keen to work with other people to do the best for children in our schools. And I think there are loads of fantastic examples in the borough of schools really going above and beyond to do that in terms of the breakfast they're providing for children, the after-school care. Lots of our schools are now signing up to a project called Opal, which is outdoor play and learning, to really, really make lunch times stimulating and fun for children, which will also hopefully have a knock-on in attendance in some schools as well. Yes, I mean, we've got some excellent examples of good practice, and I, you know, and we do through our networks give schools the chance to showcase that. So we've run our networks at Alexander First School, at Riverside, in order for people to come in and see some of the things that are happening in those schools. And I think another really, a real positive for this local authority is the willingness of schools to work together. So every month, Claire and I run network meetings for heads and a separate one for assistant and deputy heads, as well as people premium leads. And they're well attended, and people are really open to kind of sharing their practice, as well as sharing things they're finding difficult as well.
About 6 years ago, we were just about in the top 10% of boroughs. If you look at like chart 4A on overall attainment rankings, we're now just about falling out the bottom quartile with a continuous downward trend. What's the root causes of that you've identified, and the mitigations that you have to address that downward trend in our attainment performance?
I suppose that data really, so early years good level of development really does look at the whole child. And I think what's lovely about that measure is it includes personal and social, as well as English and maths. And then our next measure is phonics, which obviously is very finely just about phonics. Then we move to a wholly different measure at end of Key Stage 2 of reading, writing and maths. So I think part of the issue in terms of tracking that is it doesn't correlate as you move through. So I think for me, above and beyond what we've said, that writing really is key. And in terms of how we continue to develop that and make sure we've got really accurate data coming in from teacher assessment.
Sorry, that graph is about rate and EBAC.
Right. So I'll have to.
We've been falling as a steady downward trend.
So Key Stage 4.
Feedback is about the offer as well that our schools offer for that to happen. And I think it's the offer with the points. It's like a progress 8, isn't it? It's a score on that. And it's about the coverage that a secondary school will offer against the points on the subjects taken. That has changed a lot over the last. I'm just getting it. Sorry. So yeah, that's one of the things. And it's progress 8 is a difficult thing to measure. It really is a complicated system. It really is. And you know, one subject would have a higher score than another. And if that school doesn't offer it, that puts them at a disadvantage straight away. Okay. Yeah.
Again, it's another big part of the consultation, and the interim report that came out last week is talking about that in terms of that, because modern foreign languages possibly will be taken out of the EBAC, because that's, you know, so I think that's going to be a big part of the consultation moving forwards.
Yeah, I'd like to share our answer on that, if possible.
Can we take that as an action? Do you need that to get more information, or?
I would like to understand that, and I realise it's a really difficult measure, but the downward trend, I'd like to just reassurance that that is, you know, of what is the root cause, and are we understanding it? Is there anything that we need to take action on to mitigate, or is it just a quirk of the measure and the way we've organised the curriculum in Maidenhead? We're absolutely fine with that downward trend.
They've allowed us to have the data as well. Okay, I will do that and come back.
Okay, I'm being told we had a virtual hand up next, so I invite Purnima to ask her questions.
Hi, thank you, Clive. That's a really interesting report, and thank you for sort of all the additional educational data pack as well. My question sort of relates to the process by which the priorities for improvement have been identified and the measures put in place for addressing the educational disparities. And to this end, I'm not clear on sort of the quality impact assessment that has been presented. It says that no decisions are being made and therefore there is no impact in relation to those characteristics. What's really interesting is that the report has identified various sort of educational disparities and impact on protected characteristics. For example, looking at race and ethnicity. But the quality impact assessment doesn't sort of clearly set that out. And it would be really useful to have all that information, that really useful, helpful information that is sort of spread out across the report and the data pack, for that to be properly analyzed within the quality impact assessment, and to kind of show what mitigating measures are being taken to address those disparities. And it's great to see that one of the priority areas is the disadvantage gap. But I was wondering whether there is, I mean, I'm sorry if I've missed any of this data, but is there the data on the intersectionality between socioeconomically disadvantaged groups and other characteristics such as race and ethnicity, for example? And the quality first teaching is one of the ways, you say, of addressing that disadvantage gap. And it would be really useful to see what, if those who are from low socioeconomic backgrounds are particularly from, if there's an intersection with race and ethnicity or any of the other characteristics, how this quality first teaching actually addresses those issues. And I also know that the report identifies that, for example, Indian pupils do better than, for example, Pakistani pupils, and it has got those subcategories under Asian. And I was wondering sort of how those disadvantages and those disparities are addressed, and what measures are put in place to address those disparities. And it would be great to sort of see all of that set out in the quality impact assessment.
It's quite a long question.
The data that we got on the tables, which takes it down into the categories that we got, is how the data is collected for the Department of Education. That's how it's collected. To do what you're asking for, we'd have to know if the data team can go in and analyze that data from the school census that we got that matches the data. So I can't confirm the answer to your question without speaking to them, because this is what's required of us to report as a statutory.
My question is more on the quality impact assessment, I suppose.
I think that is a really good point, and what I would suggest, because there are lots of associated questions in there, and I think it's a really important area that I don't think we could do justice to tonight. So I would suggest that if we get your questions, we respond to them in writing and make sure that the panel see a copy of those.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Pauline, would you have any other questions?
No, that's it. I'll put my questions in writing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Move on to Councillor Conlon.
Thank you, Clive, Claire, Helen. Really informative. Well, my first question is quite simple. Writing moderation, is this what they've written or how they've written it?
So, there's a moderator as well. I should ask you. So, where obviously maths and reading, there is some form of summative assessment. The writing happens in schools. The year 6 pupils form a kind of a portfolio of writing, and to either become met or expected, there are certain criteria, and the teacher assess that element, and then it's 25%, no, 20%, isn't it? A 20% sample is on a 4-year rolling programme, and a group of moderators go in and check the judgment. They quality assure the judgment. And what has happened this year, when the moderating team have gone in, a number of schools have actually said, you know, we've got this many at working towards, and when we've gone in and seen it, we're actually, this is met, you're at met, but we only looked at 20% sample, and then it coincided with the data showing that writing was definitely the weaker area of our combined score. So we've had a greater
a greater input with all year 6 teachers attending training, but also general teachers understanding what the criteria is and having the confidence to put down if a child is met. We're not saying that's the only reason, but it is definitely a factor.
It seems so subjective.
Yes.
Also, and what I kind of mean also is it how neat it's written, or is it's literally the content of it?
There is one section that is joined and legible handwriting, and that exactly in itself, if you know, can have this amazing working on a variety of genres, and it is not joined handwriting, and therefore teachers will say, "Oh, we can't possibly say that's met." Whereas we'll say, "Can you show us one example where they have shown joined and legible writing, and everything else is there?" That can be, and it is. Can be that subjective. Whereas obviously you sit a reading sat and you get a mark and it's end of.
Yeah, and it feels kind of wrong to have that all jumbled into one, because if you can read very well and you're doing high in that, as a result of that, you probably do write very well. So then that kind of should all be one. I don't know, it just feels wrong that a teacher looks at it.
We'll be very interested in the data.
Yeah.
Because again, as a local authority, we're all aware that writing is an issue for us as a local authority. We've put in a lot of training. Our heads are very aware of this. Our teachers are very aware. And if we're also making sure that the moderation is spot on,
yeah,
we're hoping it will help. Helen, were you going to say something different? No.
It's just so young, isn't it, as well? And I'm sure they're all like really trying to do the writing. It's horrible that they're brought down on it sometimes in a subjective way, but yeah, I guess it is data driven and everything. The other question is the scattered disadvantage of RBWM. I don't necessarily completely understand this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in other areas where there's more pockets of disadvantage, does that therefore mean you have schools, whatever, that are more resource set up? Whereas we're having to try and replicate those resources in so many places for such few children that we don't necessarily have that great setup that you'd have in one place.
Yes, and I think that what we might see, for example, in a number of our schools is perhaps 2 or 3 disadvantaged pupils in cohorts. We have got schools where there's much higher PP numbers, and actually we see an even greater success actually in those schools.
Yes.
And so by scattered, what we're meaning is kind of throughout the inner school population. And also we talk about cultural capital in school and children having a huge range of opportunities outside of school. And so sometimes that disparity for children when they've got a number of classmates accessing things that they're not can actually increase that just, you know, within a class. So, I mean, as I say, it's like we really do see an enormous amount happening. Hence why we've wanted to talk to Mark Rowland and really, and he's had a meeting with us online already and said, you know, having done it for 14 years, there isn't any golden bullet, but he will happily come and work with us to see what we can do and how we can build on the good practice that is here.
Because everything's a balance. If you put all the disadvantaged children into one place, that's not fair either. But at the same time, you need to have the resources available. But yeah, the balance, good luck. It's so hard. I can't imagine how hard that is, but really appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Conran. Up next, we have Councillor Bull.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on exclusion. If the children are sort of permanently excluded from school, how do the local authority work with those children? Or do we just leave them on their own devices?
So if they're excluded, we have a duty to educate them within, is it 15 days? We have a duty to educate them in 15 days. So we will look at provision. We have a virtual Peru, which is a contract with Haybrook College in Slough, where the children will go on a programme. It's normally a 12-month programme, depending on what the exclusion is. And hopefully at the end of that 12 months, they come back through a panel, which is called Fair Access Panel. And that is where they, all secondary school, I'm talking at secondary here, all secondary schools on that meeting will come and we talk about how that child has changed and what that is, and we reintegrate them into another mainstream, in another secondary school. Bearing in mind all our secondaries are academies, all but one, which is, sorry Mark, which is why I might have an issue with the data on your question on the progress date. But For primary, when we saw there was a problem, we opened up a primary unit in Eton Wick, and the same process will happen. The difference is with the primary is we haven't got a consistent panel for the fair access because we don't have and don't want that many primary children excluded. And what we try to do if a primary child is excluded anyway, we try to get them back into mainstream as quickly as possible because that's the best place for them. But it depends on the exclusion.
Yeah, I mean, I know my own son is a teacher, so I know what they face, in reality. It's okay me asking this question. The other thing is, I quite agree with the Purnima asking the questions. There's no data in the report about ethnic minorities. Or have I missed it?
There's a table.
Okay.
I'll find it.
Okay. Thank you. I'll have a look at it. Thank you.
If you look at table 4, tables 6A and 6B.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Next, we have Councillor Baskerville.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I noticed on the report, although it's, as you say, it's about 2 years out of date to some extent, we're trying to play catch up with some of the information. You mentioned about the vocabulary gap and the communication skills. I mean, has that increased in the Royal Borough in the last couple of years, to your knowledge, with the information you get from schools? But I'm a school governor myself, and I'm aware that there are problems with communication skills. It might be down to the fact that kids spend most of their time with their noses in an iPhone or something, I don't know, but they don't seem to be talking to each other as much as they used to, it seems. And the other thing which has been a concern amongst some of the teachers, I don't know if, again, you're getting this feedback, not only through here, but maybe through other authorities, about the kids starting in school who haven't been potty trained. Are you getting that feedback as well? Because it seems to be a strange one for me. I mean, what's going on at their homes?
So to answer the last question first, if that's okay. We recognise there's a school readiness concern, and we opened up the Anchor Centre, which is an outreach programme for children that are not quite school ready, for what you're saying. We recognise that since the pandemic, since we came back, and that's had such good positive impact where the child goes there for a short period of time, and there's the work that's done with that child to bring them back into the mainstream schools. So that has been recognised. I'm sorry, what was the first question? Does anyone remember?
So one of the things that Claire and I did after we'd been to the Pupil Premium Conference was that they talked at the conference about how we write our PP statements that every school has to publish on the website. So we spent some time going back to the websites of schools and looking at, because on that document as a school you identify what your areas of concern are, and then what you're going to do to address those and the evidence that sits behind it. And so certainly, I didn't have anything that we could compare it with having done it previously, but we could really see from the current strategies that lots of schools have got that as a focus. And I think that you mentioned a number of reasons, and I think it's quite a complex mix of reasons. But I would say, if not all, but most schools are really focusing on oracy. And we do that within every subject, so that there's a massive drive in terms of oracy in maths, for example. So it really is something that is a sharp focus. And there's some really good projects out there, like Voice 21? Voice 21, that a number of our schools are doing, where it's a particular issue.
Some schools are still playing catch up after the COVID sort of shutdown, that some of the kids missed out on the communication skills by not being at school and mixing with other children. And that seems to have been a problem. Again, I don't know what was going on at the homes at the time, but hopefully they are making up that gap now. But regarding, as I said, that business with potty training, but my main concern there was the fact that teachers might have had to take time out to deal with them when the other kids in the class were losing time. And that was my concern, really. And hopefully, you know, with the bit you mentioned, the fact that there are other places to go to and sort that out, that, you know, they again, the other children won't be missing out because of this time aspect of spending time dealing with the other children.
Yeah, it is the case. And the school readiness programme is very much about children who perhaps aren't, find it hard to regulate in the school setting and need to be in a smaller setting just to help them with that. But certainly schools are saying that there are some higher percentages of children coming in who haven't been toilet trained. And you are right, because it does take staff out of the classroom to support children. I mean, I'm certainly finding, I know a lot of schools are, that we're doing more work at the point of induction for parents to support them with parenting strategies, for example. So definitely schools are doing that kind of work.
I mean, just on that point, do you feel that, you know, they're probably taking time out to do that when really that's down to the maybe lack of parenting skills for whatever reason? I don't know what it is, but the school's having to take time out to deal with something which really shouldn't be their problem, but it is an issue, isn't it? And the sooner it's dealt with, obviously, for everybody's point of view, particularly the children's, it's got to be a good thing.
Onto that as well, we recognise that as well, and we recognise we've done quite a lot of TA, teaching assistant training, over the past, well, it was about last month, where we did a whole week of course about TAs being trained in different areas and different aspects, and we are going to continue that, recognising that the landscape is changing within our schools. Okay.
Next we have Councillor Shaw.
I was just looking over the statistics for absences in RBWM school, which we've seen a consistent downward trend since COVID, which is a good thing. But there's an interesting move around where it seems some schools almost don't have this trend, as in some of them seem to be almost random movements, some have gone straight down. Some of them didn't seem to go up from COVID at all. So is it just random from sampling size? Was there some school strategies that could be learned from for others? Or is it kind of pure random? Yes, yeah.
The numbers you got there are recorded through a system which the DfE supplied to schools, which feeds into us, so they're accurate numbers of persistent absences. I would say that some of the persistent absences could be down to medical needs as well, and that could be that can be the child is part-time on a part-time timetable and doing an alternative provision because of the medical needs. So we could drill down onto that aspect. But persistent absences in school,
it does vary school to school and from different cohorts. And so for example, I feel very fortunate because my school sits really high in terms of our attendance. And yes, that is, I'm not saying it's not down to the work we're doing at school, but actually we've got a parent body who are very supportive of education, and who don't take holidays in term time largely. And I think in other schools that is more of an issue, people going abroad for longer periods of time. So it varies school to school, but what's the kind of positive that Clive mentioned was that every school has an attendance lead now, as well as an attendance officer, and we all attend meetings with our white law each term, and have updated information to support us with that. So there's lots of different strategies that are shared that different schools are doing, and there's some schools working incredibly. So if you know, I know those headlines, if you look at the kind of league table of it, but there'll be schools sitting at the bottom who are working incredibly hard on their attendance. But it's really difficult, you know, if parents have chosen to take children out of school for extended periods of time and take into account fining as part of their plans.
We work with head teachers all the time looking and supporting this, and I think we'll find that, you know, head teachers and schools are all over this. They are weekly looking, tracking the data, you know, down to is this pupil of SEND? Is it a boy? Is it a girl? You know, what year group? Is there a pattern? Is there a trend? They're out, they're doing their home visits, they're ringing daily. Heads that have never wanted to fine are going down the fining. I think it's like everything, it's just on the focus all of the time. And
I mean, we literally go out and pick children up. So, you know,
Yeah.
we will do anything we can to get children into school.
The amount that are going into the houses, or, you know, going over and above to get pupils into school, it's very good, isn't it? Very good. But I think it's also, you know, that weekly tracking now. It's not just looking at the end of an academic year or an end of a term. It's week on week and analysing that data. Is there a pattern? Is there a trend? Is there a family?
So what we encourage schools to do is to have that kind of tracking, then look at what they did as an intervention, which might, for example, be that they've had a meeting with family, that they've looked at providing breakfast club before school, and so that we can kind of see and track through various case studies what's had an impact in terms of improving attendance. And then all schools have got access to educational welfare officers as part of the borough's commitment, so that you can buy more days of the service, but we all have a basic level, and they will support us in terms of if we're concerned about families. And sometimes join up the dots, because there'll often be siblings in other schools as well.
And that process also links into the pupil premium and disadvantage, because attendance is one of our barriers as a local authority. So that's that real intensive drive as well.
Okay. It seems there's no more questions, so I'll just thank Clive, Claire and Helen for presentation and answering our questions. Okay. Next, move on to agenda item 7, the work programme. Looks like there are a few things on there, but there's always room for more. So if anyone has any questions or comments on that or recommendations, looks like Kevin has a recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. I've been speaking to Councillor Taylor before she unfortunately had to depart this afternoon. At the Maidenhead Town Forum a few weeks ago, there was some questions from the Windsor Carers group about the support that's changed for groups like them since the pandemic. And I agreed with Councillor Taylor that it would be good to do a task and finish group on the support we're giving to voluntary groups that are working with our vulnerable people, be they adults or children. So I'd like to propose that we put that onto the work programme. I'm happy to work on the paperwork.
Is that all many volunteer groups or just Windsor Carers?
I mean, so there's a number of groups. There's one in particular that's brought it to our attention. So one of our officers has already started that conversation. But Councillor Taylor and I believe it's a wider group and a wider opportunity for us to offer a wider amount of support to more groups.
That sounds good to me. We'll in agreement with that. Mark, you written that down. Good. Anything else? Carol De Costa, sorry, wasn't looking.
So there was just a couple of things I really would like to have bringing back the update on the disadvantage gap put onto the working programme, and to get a report back from sharing information through Berkshire Health and Frimley Health to make sure that we're getting evidence of improvements for seamless care, because it really is an issue. So I'd like those things put on forward programme.
We're all in agreement with this? Looks that way. All right, anything else? Then, oh.
Thank you, Chair. And I've not had an opportunity to say this to you, but I am obviously Councillor Taylor unfortunately had to leave us. And I spoke to her, as you know, in the middle of the meeting, and this is her last, or was going to be her last session as chair of this panel. So she wanted to thank everybody, councillors, officers, everyone who supported this panel for the last number of years since she's been chair. And she would have said that herself if she's been here. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I think I can speak for all councillors when I say we thank Helen for her service as well in this role. All right, third time asking, can I finally close this meeting? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.